Black Country Blokes chewing the fat.
Listen.
I've been hearing a lot lately about men don't talk, but in my experience, men do talk, just people aren't listening. So it's going to be me and a group of blokes discussing our struggles and victories through life. Warning, there may be some bad language, so apologies to all the moms, especially my own. Let's get going.
Listen.
I've been, yeah, just the Black Country Blokes, chewing the fat about everything it is, men's mental health, disability and life in general. Here with me, Kev Dillon, and my partner in crime, as always, Lee Catlin. Almost forgot your name then, not Paul.
It wouldn't be the first time, would it?
It's been a long day. And we're joined by Nick. Now, Nick, we tried to get on the other week, but the gremlins of the internet were against us, but we go round two. So, Nick, thank you ever so much, brother, for coming on.
Thank you for welcoming me back. Pleased to be here.
And as always, we're going to start with our gratitude list. I'm just always grateful to be alive and kicking, but we had our boxing show on the weekend. We had 16 bouts on, going with 8 winners. But I'm proud of my Lions. I'm proud of the teams that travel over, the officials, my mum and Auntie Leslie, who do all the groundwork at the back. Josh did a great job of matching it. And the important thing, everyone had fun and left safe. So I'm grateful. What are you grateful for, brother?
I got the opportunity on the weekend to go out on my motorbike for the first time this year, and to enjoy the weather and just cruise around. It was, and I did a bit of work on it as well, which was just really nice. So I'm thankful for that. Clears my mind.
Nick, what are you grateful for, bro?
I guess I'm grateful to be here. I'm very much about living in the present, and whilst thinking about the past and thinking about the future, it's really the present that we can make the changes. So, that mindfulness about being here and now.
Well, it's something that we chatted about last time, and you were saying about when you were in therapy, saying, how are you? You really struggled with it, didn't you?
You know, how you feeling?
How you feeling?
I couldn't describe my feelings. I found that really, really hard because I'd never really thought about it, to be honest. And I can tell you what I'm doing all the time, but not how I feel about doing that. And I suppose life gets so busy that can happen as well, that you're just too busy doing life that you're not actually considering how that makes you feel doing that thing.
Because you're a therapist by trade, aren't you?
Yes, I'm an accredited therapist, BCB accredited, and so I'm an integrative therapist, which means that I've been trained in different, what we call approaches, different modalities, and so it's like a toolbox that you have different tools that you bring out for different people and different needs, and those needs change often within therapy. Someone will come in with one presenting problem, and then 3 or 4 weeks later, you find out that either there's a different problem that they want to focus on, or that something's been bubbling under the surface and it comes out. So we never really know which tool we're going to have to pull out until that person presents.
Well, someone explain that to me. It's like a bottle of champagne. You're shaking it. You never know what shake the cork's just going to pop out.
That's very true. That is very true. And in a way, that's the way it should be. Because if you think about it, if we're living in the moment and we're connecting with our feelings, as you just said, that is that therapy question. We kind of start with what brings you to therapy, but often very quickly we're going to say, well, how do you feel? What are you feeling? And so if we're in that moment, then of course that moment is going to take us in whichever direction we are feeling drawn to, and that's the way it should be, a natural approach, really.
And I suppose when you initially go to therapy, it is usually about what you think is a single subject, a single problem, but actually as you progress through it, you realize there's other things and other problems or other that arise, and to have tools that you've got at your disposal where you can change the conversation or change the way you treat is ideal, isn't it?
Yeah. So a lot of the therapist's job is to listen, and we call it active listening. So actively listening to every single thing that somebody's saying. And that communication is not just through words, it's through body language, through the way that we don't say things, whether through silence or whether we just want to contemplate something for a moment, the pauses in between. And then there's the subtext, the language beneath the language that we we are using to communicate. Yeah.
Because it's like, I was talking to someone the other day. Some people feel like a kind of safeness in being angry. Because if you're angry all the time, you're just up for a row. There's strength in not being vulnerable, isn't there? Because
Yeah.
if I accept that I'm not angry all the time, and sometimes I have a cry, and sometimes I get emotional, and sometimes I get frightened. That's almost frightening, isn't it? It's okay, just be a pit bull, growling at everybody all the time.
I think for men as well, anger is accepted, isn't it? Like, in terms of, if you see someone crying, there's a perception as a man that you shouldn't be doing that. But actually, if you see someone, well, he's a bloke, you know, he gets angry.
Mm.
You know, there's a different attitude towards it.
Yeah, I think there's a shift, isn't there, about
There's definitely a shift
about the perception of what it means to have men's reactions, the male reaction to things. And anger is a very interesting one, because it can be a defense mechanism. It can be a way, as you say, to hide vulnerabilities. That's one thing. But also, I'm not sure it's therapy's job necessarily to get rid of all anger. There are some times when anger is very justified, or when some of the what's sometimes perceived as negative reactions are justified. If you see an old lady being mugged in the street, you don't want to necessarily just kind of dismiss the feelings that brings up in anyone, because that's part of empathy, part of recognizing what someone else is going through. So I think anger's quite a complex emotion.
And it's one of those times, say, justified. Someone breaks into your house, you're not going to say, oh, do you want a cup of coffee? That is there sometimes to keep you and your loved one safe, isn't it?
Absolutely. And we find that a lot of these emotions that are triggered at stress points are actually throwbacks to evolution, when we had to take certain steps and certain actions in order to protect ourselves or protect our family.
What got you into therapy? What was this eureka moment for you then?
Well, that is a long, complicated story. Going back a while, about 18 years now, my life was going great. I was in the film game. I've been in the film game since I left university. It was a very exciting time. I was doing really well, traveling all around the world. And I was about to shoot my first movie, and I had the misfortune of getting into a relationship with somebody who turned out to be a violent abuser. And she managed to hide it very well. And like lots of abusers, they're very, very manipulative and very good at hiding things. And I mean, I think times have changed a lot. This is going back, as I say, going back about 18 years. And at that time, there was a stigma. If you were a man and you were in a relationship with a violent woman, it just wasn't taken that seriously. I remember going at one point when she'd punched me in the face and I had a black eye, and I went to the local police station. It's closed now. And I saw the desk sergeant, and I explained what was going on. And he was just dismissed me, just said, well, you're a man, just deal with it.
How much courage it must have taken you to go there in the first place? 9 times out of 10, that wouldn't have been the first time, and you're thinking she'll be okay, she just had a drink, or whatever her reason is. So when you've actually had to walk through the door, then you're belittled. It's tough, isn't it?
Yeah. As I say, I'd like to think times have changed since then. And, it takes a long time, although that was a short relationship, it takes a long time to get over those things. And so I found it very difficult to deal with the fact that authorities were not there to protect you. You obviously can't hit somebody back. You're powerless. You've got the stigma of it. The embarrassment of explaining it to your family of what's going on. It's a very difficult thing. So a lot of the reactions you have are very internalized.
And you've been whammed 2 times as well. So you put your trust in this lady who then has obviously betrayed that and hit you. Then you've gone to the police, someone you should also trust to protect and help, and they've done it as well.
I went to solicitors as well. They tried to do something, but she was just very, very good at what she did, which is being a violent abuser and hiding it. In fact, so much so, even though my mother, God rest her soul, she's not here anymore, even though my mother did believe me, I felt the need at one point for her to kind of experience it firsthand. So when the person I'm talking about wasn't around, my mother came into the house and she stayed in one room, and my abuser was in the other room saying things like, well, I'll never be caught. You'll never be able to catch me. No one will ever hear. And of course, my mother could hear everything. And there was a kind of need to make sure other people had confirmation.
It's almost back yourself up.
Yeah, because otherwise you're saying something and people are, they're just not, it's not in the normal world. It wasn't anything I'd ever experienced before. So that was a real eye-opener for me. And I mean, I'll come back to it, but long story short was that after that ended, thank God, I sought professional help, and I eventually got some help. And then it took time to get over that. And when I got over it, I decided that I would try and do something about it, because I'm generally a really positive person. So I like to try to take even the most negative experience and turn it into something positive. So I decided that I would train to become a therapist. I started off actually as a hypnotherapist, and then I moved into psychotherapy, and to use that to help other people.
Did you feel like, you said as a positive person, did you feel like she almost robbed you of that for a period?
Yes, I think there's no doubt that when you have a relationship with a violent abuser, so much of your time is taken up dealing with that other person, and that, so you don't have your own identity. I used to dread going home, even though it was my house and my home, which I owned. I used to dread, sometimes I wouldn't go home. I would just go and check into a hotel. It was just so, it was just so grim. It was just so grim. And also, for me, never having experienced that before, I kind of was just shocked that there are evil people around. It's really, that in itself took time to process, basically.
I think I had a similar experience with my daughter when she was born and going through her problems, because I class myself as a positive person and tend to look on the bright side. But I had all these small little hammer blows that were coming at me, and kept doing it, kept getting ill, kept going to hospital, and it was just these small, and I felt myself draining and not being as positive, but I also found that actually as things, as I've got used to the situation, as things are getting got better, as we got used to it all, as the family got used to it all, that positive side actually came back really easily. Yeah, I think because I've been in that mind frame for so many years anyway, and now, Kev will tell you, not a lot gets past me, not a lot phases me at all, does it? It's really quite a positive outlook. So I think you slip back. Well, I found I slipped back in to my normal self a lot easier than I thought I would.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point you've made, that there's a time, isn't there, where which you need to recuperate and almost regroup as a person. And when you get to that point, then of course very quickly your natural self, you find your natural self isn't again, beaten, and that person is just left as the sad, nasty, violent person they are, and you're left as the person that you always were before you met them, and carry on being that person after you.
That's it. And I think it also, because you've gone through it and you're at the end of it, it actually makes you more positive. Actually, it doesn't really matter what comes at me, because I felt like I've been in the worst situation I can be in, and you know what, I'm still here.
Yeah.
You know, and I've still got a bright outlook on life. Still want to live life. I'm still good.
Resilience.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It does. It's resilience.
And I like to think there's a lot more help out there now, that there are, you know, that the people in that situation are much more vocal, and that there is not so much stigma, and at least there are places to go. Because at the time when you're living that, you're kind of, I think you mentioned about being robbed of your identity, but you're also robbed of your potency, because you can't fight back. You can't, you know, you've got somebody who punches you, you've got somebody who hits you and hurts you, but you can't do anything back. So you're impotent in that way. You're robbed of your own strength. So afterwards, I always tell people, it's about getting yourself back. And as you say, really, really strong thing to say is that not only do you end up getting yourself back, you can draw on your experience from that, which I definitely have done, and it spurs you forward. And so I trained as a psychotherapist. I got my accreditation. I work at Black Country Mental Health, and we have a peer support group for victims of trauma, for men who are victims of trauma, whatever that trauma is, because we define trauma in the broadest sense now, not just as it was originally, which was kind of shell shock from World War I, and when it was really became focused on, it was the soldiers coming back from Vietnam. That's when it was when post-traumatic stress disorder was really looked at closely, and we have the research and evidence to support that, the work for that. So we have a peer support group, a drop-in that you come in, and anyone can just come in. They don't have to speak. They don't have to be victims of domestic violence like I was, but they can just have experienced any form of trauma.
And trauma is such a wide scope, isn't it?
Yeah.
I had PTSD, I got attacked by a staffy, but then you have someone else who they're abused, or everything affects us differently, doesn't it? You could have the worst upbringing in the world, and then something like losing a boxing match could trigger that off because you felt embarrassed. And we're all different, aren't we? And I keep saying the best friend of any mental health is loneliness.
Yeah.
So hopefully, if we're having these broad conversations, saying you haven't got to feel shame for this. Yeah. It wasn't you; it was the perpetrator. And I think a lot of times with men, I keep hearing it like, well, the suicide of men is so high because men don't talk. You're putting the blame back on the victim. You know, if a young woman is raped and you go, well, she shouldn't have been wearing a miniskirt. It still wasn't her fault. Yeah. And that's what's happening. I'm thinking we need to, when men are brave enough or women are brave enough to talk about anything, listen to them. Don't take the other person's side, because they're coming to you for help.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the shame is... you need to have internal resilience in order to be able to get over the shame, because some people who've had adverse childhood experiences, they've already had their resilience pushed down, right? And they're already susceptible to trauma. So if they're get in a violent relationship later on in life, their resilience is already tempered, is already attenuated. So the shame, that idea that you're not worth it, that it's about self-value, that's the driver of shame, and that's something which a lot of people bring to trauma group therapy. There's a lot of shame that starts off in the room, and the first port of call is to, when you're ready and in your own way, is to share that with others who have experienced something different but similar. Now that sounds contradictory, but it's common ground in that there's a collective sense of shame, but it's different in that everybody's experience is unique to them.
But pain's pain, isn't it? And you can relate to someone's, you've been through something similar, yet different, same but different, but you're on the other side of it, or you might have a trick of the trade to help me get through it.
Yeah. And the data tells us, the empirical evidence, the science behind it tells us that peer support is very effective in helping people. So it's not just that, we think you know, this can help people. We know that the data backs that up, that actually people, because part of it is, the starting point is safety, right? So you're in a group, and for the first time, for some people, the first time ever, they're in a safe environment. So that's the most important thing, is to create safety. And probably the thing that comes pretty soon after that is a sense of normalization. You're not alone, right? This has happened to everybody in this group in some way. So those two things combined, safety and normalization, they're the starting point of allowing someone who's suffered trauma to stabilize their position, because that's the first thing you want to do, is stabilization.
And you give them a community where they are.
Yes.
And I think the breakdown of community. Well, today it's been a sunny day, and I was laughing with someone. I went 5-10 years ago. Every beer garden you drove past would have been chock-a-block, because the pub was the focal point of the village. You know, but that's when it was like £1.50, £2 a pint.
Yeah.
But how expensive pints are now, you can't just go down there on a sunny day and have a skinful for a tenner. I'm not saying everyone's going to go and drink, but you can have a coffee.
Yeah.
And I think once the community is broke down and we don't know our neighbours, and we live in a digital world, like my wife works mainly from home now, but when she goes into the office, no one's talking around the photocopying machine. Everyone's become so isolated. And I think that's got a lot to do with how we connect with one another.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think that's absolutely right. And now we're seeing a lot of the consequences of COVID. In fact, I don't think certainly with the kids and the young adults that I see in private practice, post-COVID, we don't actually know the full consequences of what COVID has done to them in those formative years when they lost contact, or they lost face-to-face contact with their friends, you know, and other students. We don't quite know what the long-term consequences of that are, but certainly lots of people who come into the therapy room, at some point, COVID comes into it, or the consequences of COVID comes into it. For
we
them.
spoke a bit about this last week, didn't we? And I was, because obviously we're of a generation where that community was strong, and we grew up face to face. You had to knock on someone's door to ask them to come out to play. You had to do all that. Now I think of more my son than my daughter, and actually he's more used to an environment where he puts his headphone on and talks over his gaming and communicates that way. And the truth is, we don't know whether that's better or worse, because we've not had a long enough time span to measure the effects, good or bad. Because there's definitely good in being able to speak to anyone around the world, whether it's face to face or not. It's definitely a positive thing. But is it that do we view it not so positively because we're not from that generation and we're used to being in front of someone to speak?
Yeah. And I mean, during COVID, I did do some sessions online with people, but that was through a need to do that, because without that, there wouldn't have been therapy. But post-COVID, unless there's some exceptional reason, all of my sessions are done face to face.
Yeah, I mean, we're the same with the podcast, because we have the opportunity to do it online, and if it's people across the world, obviously we do it online. You know, we're not Joe Rogan, we can't fly you in, unfortunately, but we much prefer having someone sitting opposite on the couch, don't we?
I mean, sorry, I was just going to say, I do have to put a bit of a disclaimer on that, though, because that's just my personal clinical preference. There are lots of therapists out there who have stayed completely online, and for them it works, and presumably for their clients it works. So that's just my personal view, that working in the room is more effective.
But I like being in the room instead of, you know, you can do it on Zoom and whatever. But I like when you can see someone's shoulders slumped, or like sometimes we're on the phone, you can't see the body. And I think, as you were saying, so much of our conversation isn't just verbal. It's, are they looking at you? Are they twitchy? Are they? And I think it's such a skill to see that in people. And I don't know, as you say, it might be thoughts, but I think
But
there is
what you
something
mentioned
there.
it at the start, didn't you? That you look for all that.
Yeah,
When you're with a patient, you're looking for all that, whether it be foot tapping, which you're not going to see if it's over a camera. You know, those little things that I suppose are telltale signs that someone does want to talk about something or doesn't, or there's an opening to talk about something, anything like that.
I mean, there are some exceptions. Obviously, people have got social anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing. There's some people with physical disabilities that prohibits them from leaving the house. There are some people, I worked with a couple of people who found it very difficult to leave the house at all, not through any physical disability, but they were just psychologically unable to, to leave the house. So in those, there are cases that sometimes we would make exceptions. But even in those cases, we might visit them and try to do that face to face. But that end of things, that's more on a case by case basis, really.
But I think for everybody, I think COVID affected us all.
Yeah.
Because when COVID first happened, it was it's a load of softness, and then it got very real, very quickly, and it was like the Black Death. My daughter, or our kids were pulled out of school. Then you come to your mom. My wife was getting my shopping for us, my mother-in-law, my mum and dad, my next door neighbour was bleaching it, putting it on, and I think it's left us all with some form of PTSD.
I think I'll be the exception to that, to be quite honest.
But most people,
yes,
because even at the time, like your subconscious was soaking it in. Are we ever going to be able to go to the boxing gym? Are we ever going to be able? And I think then one day it was just back to the world. And it was like, but we've had all this in our minds, and our mind doesn't know if it's good news, bad news, because that's what your subconscious does. Your conscious is going, we're all right now, but you've just soaked in all that death and plague, and I can't touch my mum. If I touch my mum, she's going to die. And I think and we're only 5 years out the hole. I've got pants that are longer than 5 years old. So, and I think, and then it's like, well, you're an idiot if you're a vaccine. You're an idiot if you're not a vaccine. You're a idiot. And you're thinking, it was massive. Things like sending my daughter back to school. Well, should I? We've been well behaved. I know what we've done. I think the brain is going to take a long time to get over it.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like I said, we're not going to know the long-term effects for quite some time, particularly with younger people.
And I think with the elderly, we went somewhere.
And at the other end with the elderly too. When
you go into shops and you'll see someone wearing a mask or someone behind the counter. And I went to one the other day and there was a lady with a mask on. But I went to another shop and the cashier had her mask on. I thought, that's a long time to sit there being frightened.
Yeah.
For you say 8-hour shift. And I'm thinking, but what's that doing to her mentally down the long run?
Or maybe it's stopping her being frightened, it's protection.
Maybe. But it's I think, and we had someone on the radio that was saying it's this many-armed beast that get into every part of society, and I think it affected so many people in so many different ways. And it's funny, I feel like we will never know the damage that it did.
You may well be right.
Is that your phone?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just making sure it's nothing important.
But let's tell us. I mean, we'll come back to all this in a bit. But tell us about your films. I mean, you've worked with some massive stars as well, haven't you?
Yeah, quite a few stars. Used to do a lot of music videos. Worked with Freddie Mercury and Queen and.
Did you meet
like
him?
that back? Yes.
What was he like?
If he did, he have to do his video.
Pretty wild. Pretty wild. And then I've done a few movies and I've done hundreds of TV commercials. So it's spread out over the years. I've been in the film game for a long while. I'm working on a new movie called Pomeranski, written by, the novel was written by Gerald Jacobs. And the first draft is coming out on the 6th of May of the screenplay.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and we aim to shoot that towards the end of next year.
All in the UK?
Yes, it's set in post-war Brixton. It's an ensemble piece and it's a thriller that's about the transition from the Brixton neighbourhood, really from having some Jewish roots to more Jamaican roots, and it's that shift in the cultural landscape there.
And I bet it talks about like crime, racism.
Yeah, it's a kind of, I would say it's a bit like The Sopranos meets a Tarantino movie, but set in Brixton
Brilliant.
in the 50s.
And that will start this year.
Next year. Towards the end of next year, we'll shoot it. The script is the first draft is coming out 6th of May.
If you ever need any extras.
Yeah.
How do you balance that with kind of, I'll say your day job, but I suppose they're both day jobs.
They're both day jobs. They tend to be so the movie stuff is very focused. So shooting a movie normally takes about 40 days.
Is that all really?
Yeah, well, that's the actual 40 shoot days.
Yeah.
Sometimes even less, about 35 to 40 shoot days for a low budget UK movie. And then there'd be 2 months prep and maybe 2 to 3 months post. There's a lot more that goes on before that in terms of the raising of the finance, which I'm not involved in, and in terms of the script development and casting, which I am involved in. But those front end bits, they're kind of more trickle things, and they can carry on in the in the background really.
And how'd you get into this? How'd you get into film?
I left university having read politics as a young man who wanted to change the world. I'd always been interested in filmmaking and photography, and I combined those together and started making documentaries. That got me to live in Tokyo for 2 years, and I was based in Southeast Asia, based in Tokyo, working in Southeast Asia, making documentaries. I went to Vietnam to shoot an underground documentary about the youth there, and did all that for a few years and won a few awards and really enjoyed it. And then after 2 years, I'd lived in Japan. I'd learnt Japanese. I took my driving test in Japanese. I was becoming quite into Japanese society, and I decided there was a cut-off point. Either I was going to stay there and kind of live the life of a gaijin, which is a foreigner in Japan, or I was going to come back. And I decided to come back, and I was an award-winning filmmaker. I'd done really well. I came back. I thought this is going to be fantastic, and I couldn't get a job. Could not get a job at all. And being the resilient person I am, I thought, well, I'm just not going to take no for an answer. And eventually, after knocking on doors, I was like, didn't have any work. I'd run out of money. I was living off credit cards, borrowing, and eventually I got a job as a runner on a movie, and I was the T-boy basically. Yeah. And so I decided that I was going to be the best T-boy possible. I would just really throw myself into it. And we were shooting in the Philippines. So I went to the Philippines, and I had this big board, and I had everybody's name on it, from the director, the producer, the assistant producer, everybody's name. And I started making notes on what they drank during the day, who had a cup of tea, who had a cup of coffee, how many sugars was in it, who wanted a shot of whiskey in theirs, and everything plotted for the whole day. And after a week, I knew exactly what everybody wanted. So I would make sure they got what they wanted before they asked for it. And
in a lot of skill, though, to do that.
Yeah, and so that when I finished the movie, and I was basically being paid almost nothing. Somebody said, "Oh, do you want to come and work on this? And then do you want to come and work on that?" And I made myself, it was a life skill I learned really early on, to no matter what I do, is make myself indispensable. So I just decided I was going to become the best T-boy. And I would like to say I was the best T-boy.
But I'd love people to listen to this about, because you're paid on pittance, but you're paid in so much knowledge how to work the room. And as I say, if he likes a Baileys, he was having a Baileys. And if he liked a glass of water, it was going to be cold.
Yeah.
But that's, if you could take that into anything, You know, be the best road sweeper, be the best tea boy, be the best boxing coach you can be.
Yeah.
And then you've got nothing else to fall. But, you know, you can't blame nothing then, can you? Because you've done your best.
Absolutely. And I've taken that all the way through my life. Even in my therapy room now, I know what temperature my clients like the room. The air is purified every 12 minutes down to 1 micron. Everything. It's all part of
detail.
it's all part of the same thing. Whatever it is that I'm doing, I want to make it like the therapy is tailored only to that person. And so filmmaking, the actual art and business of filmmaking, is very similar in that sense.
Like, people would probably say, you know, oh, you've got OCD, but you're just a perfectionist. And that's the difference, because OCD is a very serious condition, isn't it? Whereas a lot of people, like, I've got a migraine, you've got a bloody headache.
Yeah.
You know when you've got a migraine, you know when you've got OCD, but you just...
So we have to be careful about perfectionism, because actually in psychotherapy, perfectionism is not necessarily a good thing, because it can create paralysis, right? So there are a lot of people who say, I'm a perfectionist, so I can't do anything. And it becomes an excuse not to do anything. So I think perfectionism in the non-therapeutic sense is great. That's just striving to be the best that you can be. But actually, if you are... So I am a perfectionist, but I'm not a perfectionist who ever believes they're going to reach perfection. So therefore it doesn't get in my way. If a true perfectionist can't do things because they know they're not going to achieve perfection. I know I'm not going to achieve perfection. I just want to get as close as I can.
Should we call that, I'll do my bestest?
Or I'll do my very bestest. Something like that.
What's your most proud thing you've been a part of, like in the cinema world or the
I am the... So I don't know if let me put it this way. Have you seen any kind of Sergio Leone type movies where you see that this thing, it's called totem pole, and it belongs to the Navajo Indian, right? And it's you know the landscape of all the cowboy movies, right? And this is on Indian territory, Native American territory, and there is this column which is called totem pole.
Yeah, I know what totem pole is.
You've seen it, right? So I am the last person in the world to ever stand on that. I jumped out of a helicopter and stood on top of it. There was me, a cameraman, the world freeform abseiling champion, and one other person. I think there was an assistant, and it was for an advertisement for, I can't remember the glue, but basically it was to put some glue in a piton and abseil down it. And so he abseiled down, the helicopter picked up the other people, and I was the last person to stand on it. And I had to go and live with the Navajo. So we went, there were 14 of us went over there, and we went to see the Navajo Indians and say, the Navajo tribe, the chief, and say, you know, could we film on top of this? Because the person before me was Clint Eastwood. He's been on it as well for the Iger sanction. And they said no, because it's sacred. It is our totem pole. It's sacred. But I saw that there were loads of cracks on it and loads of things. So what happened was everyone else went home, and they said, Nick, you stay here, but don't come back until you've got permission to film on it. So I stayed with them and lived with them. And eventually we came to an agreement whereby we would seal it all off on the top so that it could be preserved far longer than it was. And they allowed us to film on it. So I think that's probably the thing. And I had to confront my own fear of heights as well. Jumping out of a helicopter on top of a 400-foot pole, which is...
Wouldn't fancy that.
It's only 14 foot across, so it's just a little bigger than this room with rounded edges. So, yeah.
And what was it like living within that tribe and experience that culture?
Like everything I do, I threw myself into it and I just completely became part of that. I could have stayed out there. I would have been quite happy to stay out there, but I didn't have a job, so I had to come back. But yeah.
So I remember last time you were here, we were talking off air, and you're saying like the other countries you've been to and like working like in the ghettos, and where's been the most exciting place? And I'll say the next question will be where's been the most frightening place, but the most exciting.
Wow, the most exciting place. They've all been excited in their own way. I think dangerous places. I've worked in a lot of dangerous places. So shooting in the favelas in Rio de Janeiro, on the outskirts of Rio de Janeiro, they've been quite scary. I've shot with Hispanic gangs in Los Angeles. Some of the New York gangs, I've shot with them. The townships of South Africa, they're quite difficult to shoot in. But there's a thing, and that is this. First of all, you have to go in with people who are connected. You can't just, you obviously can't just waltz in. But I have really not had any problems in these situations, because I have found that if I'm my authentic self, that's okay. If you try and trick them or try and use them or try and buy your way, it just doesn't work. So my whole career in the film industry, I've had to parachute into other people's lives. And suddenly, because we were talking about Prince Nassim, when I worked with him and he was the world champion, I knew nothing about boxing, right? So there's no point me pretending I know something about boxing, but I had worked with other very famous people. I'd worked with other great sportsmen. So I'm very good at finding a connection. And actually, this ties into what I do as a therapist, because you have to find the connection. Because if you're not authentic, how can you expect your client to be authentic?
I find that because a lot of my one-to-ones downstairs, it's like counselling, a lot of talking. And if they like trains, I don't know about trains, but you tell me about trains, what do you like about trains? And it's, if I go, oh, well, I know about trains, I used to watch Thomas the Tank Engine, they can see through it, but you just go, educate me and let me into your world. And every time they come, have you been on any trains lately? And it's, you're allowing yourself to be a part of their world then, aren't you?
Yeah.
And more you relate with people, more it's not like we're drinking buddies, but we found a connection on whatever it is, let's build on it.
So there's been very few people who I've worked with, like in those areas, who haven't made me welcome and said, come back whenever you want, whatever you want, come back, we'll vouch for you, we'll look after you. And that's because a connection has been found in a very short space of time. I did a job before I was been in Rio 4 times, and once somebody said, well, would you like to meet Ronnie Biggs, the great train robber? And I said, well, yeah, fantastic, I'd love to meet him. And it was another thing about being parachuted into someone else's world. I didn't, it was older than me. I didn't know that much about, I knew who he was, but he ended up making lunch for me. And it was just about connecting with people. And I'm just going to throw this back to the therapy room, that again, because I come from this background where it's really important that the science backs up what you claim in therapy. And the evidence shows us, the scientific data shows us that the better the therapeutic relationship, the relationship between the client and the therapist, the better the prediction of the outcome. And the science absolutely supports that. And that is, in a way, although I didn't know this, I've been training to be a therapist all my life, because I've been parachuted into these situations with people who are completely outside of my experience, and had to connect with them like that, to shoot with them, to make a film with them, to get them on film and get them to be authentic. So the only way I found to do that was for me to be authentic myself.
I suppose with you within your directing role, you're trying to get the best acting out of them
Yes.
as well. So you're trying to get the best out of that person, which
Yes.
is again similar to therapy. You're trying to get that
Yeah.
person through something so they can realise their best self.
You're absolutely right. And I've got no doubt that my next film, Pomeranski, I will direct that in a far better, far more effective, deeper way, because I'm a trained therapist, without a doubt. All of that experience is then going to feed back into how I direct those actors, basically.
Is this your first project since you've become qualified?
Yes.
So you will have a completely different outlook, and about
Completely different.
from bonding with your
Yeah.
actors and just saying, well, let's dig into this now. And
Completely different.
who's your favourite person you've worked with so far? So you were looking last time, wasn't you? You've worked with some big names.
I think I really enjoyed working with Michael Madsen from Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah.
And everyone else thought he was a nightmare. I have to be slightly careful about what I say, but I think it's okay. I mean, you may well have read stuff in the papers. I can say, because it was in the papers, on the final day when we managed to just not get rid of him, but just say goodbye to him. He got arrested the next day at the Dorchester, and then they packed him on a plane and left. He is such a handful. But he also said something to me, and it was this. He said, you know what, Nick? If you can't see it now, don't worry. You'll see it on the screen. And he was absolutely right. What you find with real talent is that they can do something. The camera loves them in a way that you can't quite describe. And this is where it is different to therapy and being in the room. You sense something in the room, but it's not till you see it in big close-up on a big screen, you actually see what gives them that ability to shine above others. And that is there's a star quality that goes beyond acting ability, right? And that's the magic that they can present. So working with him, it was a handful. It was a handful all the time. Yeah.
I mean, it's funny that, as you're saying, like, them people who've got star qualities, and once again, back to the pub, but you got that old boy who you could be hanging on every word. He was a natural, funny, or great storyteller. And I think we've lost them, not we have lost, but they're hard to find. That guy who everyone in the room would just be hanging on every word.
Yep.
And that in itself is a skill, isn't it?
It is. It absolutely is. The natural storyteller. Although I would argue, again, going back to the therapy room, part of it is about teasing that out of people. Because if you therapy is about creating the right conditions for people to feel safe, to feel comfortable, to feel heard, trusted, all of those things. So you're creating conditions all the time. Now, if you can create the right conditions, the natural storyteller, because everybody has a story to tell, the natural storyteller will come out.
Yeah, and sorry, that's a lot to do with body. Because if someone's telling me a story and I'm here looking all grumpy, that story is not going to be as enthusiastically told, is it? So having someone across from you who is receptive and actively listening means that story will naturally be better.
Yeah, and I would invite anyone to come into therapy to find their own story, because sometimes we have not listened to ourselves, or we don't know our own story, or it's been so suppressed within us. But I guarantee that within you, there is a story that wants to come out. And when you feel the conditions are there, now those conditions might just be being with your mates, or they might be in a professional environment, or they could be anyway. But when the conditions are right, you will at least start to connect with your own story. And that is really at its heart what therapy is about, helping people to connect with themselves.
But we've looked over the last 5 years, having people like yourself on and different people, because how many remarkable stories aren't told?
Yeah.
You know, that guy who lives down the road, or
Yeah.
that woman who's raised 5 kids, and you're thinking movies should be made about you, and to just have a platform where people can go, how do you still put your socks on in the morning? And I go, I'm all right. You know, and you're thinking, by listening to these brave souls, you're thinking, you've got so much to give to the world.
Yeah.
And I always say that to the lads downstairs when they're shattered. I went, I don't know what you've been through, but you've been through tougher times than this and you survived it. How do I know? Because you're still here.
Yeah.
And pass that on to other people. Because that story might relate to that one person who goes, thank you, that's given me the courage to go again.
Yeah. So the therapy drive then is to help people connect with themselves. And then as groups, the community that you're talking about is, once you can start to connect with yourself, then you can share that and connect with others.
It's once you can love yourself. And I've learned that through my years. Once I started to actually like myself, I made myself more likable. And I remember what we were saying about earlier, anger having its place and this having its place. And I saw a counsellor, and it says, describe, it said, I've got this doorman, and if you can fight the doorman, then you get to meet the diplomat and the comedian. He goes, how about you keep everyone, but let's just put them in a different order. We put the doorman and the comedian first, and then if you need the backup, the doorman's there. And when they keep all the same components, we're just restructuring them, and that stuck my life. I thought, instead of being this angry guy that everyone's got to fight to find a nice person, put the nice person there, and the tough guy look after you.
Yeah.
And I just thought how clever that is, just to move something around. So simple,
Yep.
but it made the world a difference.
Absolutely.
And I mean, you'll know more about this, so I'd like to explain it. What's the difference between hypnotherapy and what are you doing? Psychotherapy.
Psychotherapy.
What's the two differences?
Right. So hypnotherapy is putting people into a deep relaxation, trance-like state. So you, just to put some myths to bed, it's not. I don't do much of it now because for reasons that I'll explain, I focus more on the psychotherapy part. But in that relaxed state, you can suggest positive things that will help that person. And because they're in such a deep trance-like state, they're more open to those suggestions. So often hypnotherapy is used for example, to help people stop smoking. Is very effective in something like that. So putting somebody in a very deep trance to put positive suggestions into their subconscious mind.
Because I think, like, I've done a lot of hypnotherapy, I think it's great. But when we think of hypnosis, we think of Las Vegas magic, you know, and he's going to make me
You always imagine someone with a clock in front, a watch in front of you doing this.
It's just a myth for the movies, isn't it?
It is, and that form of hypnosis is well, it's not something that I'm connected with, because it's the hypnotherapy. It's when it's combined with a therapy part. So there are lots of myths. I mean, the person I trained with, I asked him the question that lots of people ask: can you hypnotize anyone? And the answer is yes, if they want to be hypnotized. You can't hypnotize people who don't want to be hypnotized. So on stage hypnosis, what they're doing is they're pre-selecting people. So they have techniques for pre-selecting people, so they can identify which people are much more susceptible to being hypnotized. So that's all they're doing in the pre-selection before the show. But in hypnotherapy, the emphasis is on the therapeutic side of it and helping someone. But psychotherapy is about understanding more about what the situation is here and now, and where those issues have come from. And there are different modalities or different approaches, like CBT, which is more focused on the thinking. So I won't bore you with too many of the details, but in CBT, we challenge the thought processes. There's another form which people are very pretty familiar with, which is person-centered therapy, which is more the talking therapy. And then you can do what I do, which is an integration or an integrative approach of different approaches. So it's not driven by, okay, I'm a CBT therapist or I'm a person-centered therapist, but it combines those so that you can adjust to whatever that person wants or needs.
Once again, that's trying it out, isn't it? We're going to try this, Kev, and I've seen you responded well to it, so
exactly,
let's go down this route.
Yeah, and it's a feedback loop. You're going to try something out, especially in CBT, you try something out, you listen to what somebody has to say, and you're going to try out something like stepped exposure therapy. You're scared of spiders, so we're going to work up a hierarchy. We'll start with a picture of a spider, and then we'll work up as far as you want to go. Then you look at the picture. How does that make you feel? That creates new data. That data comes back into the room so we can tweak it, and it's a feedback loop.
And I think what you said earlier, I mean, sometimes you just don't gel with your therapist, like you don't gel with your partner. So don't throw the baby out with the water. Just think, you know what, this isn't for me. Can I try someone else? Because I think I've done counseling, NLP, hypnotherapy, cognitive behaviour, and it's but sometimes for whatever reason, not rightly or wrongly, just sometimes you just don't gel, do you? You just go, well, thank you. Be polite and try something else.
Absolutely. So in my private practice, I always invite people to come in for an initial consultation. It's free. Spend 20 minutes, half an hour, informal. They can check me out. I can make sure that I can work with them. They can make sure they can work with me. And it's really important because it goes back to what I was saying earlier. If you don't gel with your therapist, then at the best, therapy is going to take a long time. At worst, it just won't work. And there's a danger that if you come out of therapy, you might, worse than thinking the therapist is not good, you might think therapy itself is no good, and you're not going to go back into therapy. So yes, you're absolutely right. Check out your therapist first. Go and see them. Go and talk to them. Go and meet them. Ask them any questions you want, and then ask yourself these things. Do I feel safe? Do I feel comfortable? Can I work with this person? And it has to be a triple yes, and then go for it.
And do I want to?
Yeah.
Because you can only do it, like with a hypnosis, with anything. There's no good point coming to my boxing gym and not listening. You've got to come and work with your coach, because sometimes I think, I don't have an electrician come around my house and do it myself. I've paid him to come and do it. So we've got to work with him, and listen. You know what I mean? Because sometimes we go with these things, well, I can't be saved. And I'm thinking, but my friend told me this. He works in a jail. And this guy come into the therapy and he went, well, this is pointless. He goes, how long have you waited to get your cell? Did you have a wash? And he goes, you've already done about 20 steps to get here. So there's some part of you that wants to be here. So while you're here, let's just give it a good crack.
Yeah, that's a great approach.
And I thought how brilliant that was, how he said that. Because this kid or this bloke is so angry, but he had to get himself washed. He had to wait for the officer. He had to walk there. So there's a part of him that wants to, but once again, that anger, that no, but you've done so well. Let's just go that extra step now.
Exactly. And getting someone to come through the door, that's the starting point. That's the big change, because some people don't get through the door. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here tonight, is because I want everybody listening to this to consider, if they want help, come and get help. Come and contact me. Come and see us. Come and get some peer support. If I'm not the right person, I'll find the right person. Right? So it's about changing those perspectives.
And if you know you're miserable now, why not have a chance of not being miserable?
Yeah.
And I think that's something you go, I'm so unhappy. Well, let's.
Yeah.
You know you're miserable. You know you're miserable now. Well, how about we just try and change it?
Yeah.
Because this is how horrible it feels. So let's have a bash of coming, doing boxing or therapy or footballing or painting. Let's just try something. Because if you don't like it, well, you're already miserable anyway.
Yeah.
You've got nothing to lose.
But change can be a scary thing.
Oh, it is, isn't it?
It's the unknown, isn't it? So that can be something that we want to avoid. So that's a perception that we want to change. Just come and like you said, come and try some boxing.
I think sometimes you can get lost in that miserableness, can't you? That you don't really know what happiness is.
Yeah.
You know, you can just be stuck there.
And I see that with a lot of people. I'm thinking you're content on being miserable.
Yeah.
But give yourself a chance. And I hear so many people that go, but I'm hopeless or I'm worthless. And you're thinking, well, you're not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Let's give yourself a chance. Or I didn't want to bother you, Kev. As long as I keep picking my phone up, you ain't bothering me. Find someone who loves you, shows you love, and shows that you two are worth being happy.
Yeah.
And once you can start realising that, you know, that I'm not worthless and I too may be happy, it gives you hope, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I think hope, let's say, hope's not dead, it's just hibernating sometimes. You just got to let it rest a little bit and it'll wake up when it's ready.
Yeah.
But never lose it, never believe that it's dead.
It's just about finding a space within yourself to be open to the possibility of something. That's all you need. You don't need to believe in something. You don't need to find a faith and a blind faith in someone else or even in yourself. Just an openness. That's all it takes to open that door, is finding the openness in your attitude or yourself.
That's a lovely way to finish. Is there anything else, Nick? Do you want to say anything else you want to promote before? Oh, by the way, Dudley Mental Health, Black Country Mental Health.
Black Country Mental Health.
Congratulations, you guys are getting an award, the King's Award, same as us, this Sunday. So we're going to be there.
You've got the matching award.
Yes, and
congratulations to you guys.
Yeah, well, I'll be seeing our Chaz, you know, see in a couple of weeks. But it's
so I would just say as a final thing to anyone listening to this, if you are even considering seeking help, reach out, because it's out there and you will find a very warm welcome from most people involved in any way in a therapeutic sense or peer support group. And generally, if they're not the right people, they will find the right people. So please feel free to reach out.
And Nick, is the dreaded question. Have any quotes or sayings have helped you get through life?
Find the moment and live in the moment.
Lovely, bravo. Well, thank you, Nick, for coming on.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you guys for everyone listening. I want you all to take care of yourselves and each other. Ta-ra a bit.
Listen.
And that's a wrap for another show. But if there are any comments or messages that you would like us to read out for our next podcast, please be in touch. There are also lots of different organisations at the bottom of this page, and hopefully they can help you or someone you care about. Please share this to spread the word. Until we talk next time,